That's it. That's fine, folks.
Chris Colbert, he looks small in the ring, and I'm not talking about size, but there was no presence there. He never dominated the ring center, and that's where the fight was lost for Chris. Like, I can't remember what round it was, but Garcia's cornerman said, keep it in the ring center. Don't get backed up. And that was good, sound advice. Garcia took whatever was there, headshots, landed some good right hands, and whatever part of the torso he could hit. Not that he was going wild, but he was just whacking Chris about and had him pinned up on the ropes for too many periods in the fight. Chris has to realize, yeah, he's got fast hands and he wants to have a kind of flashy style, but he's just hoping that his opponents will oblige him, and that's not boxing. Like, you got to be able to grit down. You got to be able to grit down in your gum shield and just do the fundamental things and learn how to fight inside. Be consistent with your jab. Hit the body. Like he was saying he had dog the other week. You know, he stayed the course, but to me, he didn't fight with no intensity and no passion. He was just hoping that my guy would just allow him to throw quick 1-2s and look clumsy and awkward and not fire back, but no, he didn't oblige. Garcia, he didn't do anything extraordinarily technically great, but his fundamentals held up, and he was the bigger featherweight out of the two, and the body shots made Chris reluctant to be himself in there from the third round. To me, Chris looked like he froze in there a little, perhaps. Looks like he froze. The fight was running away from Chris, so he tried to get aggressive in the seventh, and that left hook counter put him on his back, bro. His legs flew up in the air and shit, and that put Chris back in his place. Garcia only took the fight on a couple of weeks' notice, apparently. Chris was saying, he hasn't studied him or anything like that. Well, maybe you should have. Maybe Chris should have studied. What's up with the Philly shell? Do a lot of these kids think, yeah, I'm going to have a Philly shell, it's going to intimidate my opponent? No, it's not going to do anything, bruh. Well, it makes you feel like a superstar pushing up your shoulder and shit. I don't get that. I really don't get that. Because it wasn't effective. Why was he standing between rounds? They had him standing up. What was the science behind that? Because it didn't help him throughout the fight. Maybe he needed the rest. He needed a stoppage in the last round, but it was him just trying to avoid getting stopped. Like he was on the back foot, not aggressive, and it was a bad night. He'll have to come back and try again. I never believed that he was as good as Shakur Stevenson, and I'm not taking Garcia's win away. Garcia beat Colbert. It wasn't Stevenson. When a lot of people were trying to pitch me Shaq versus this kid here, I said, nah, he's not ready for that. He's not ready for that, and maybe you can get a rematch with this guy if he wants it. Looks like he's got to drop down a level. This looked like it was a step up, and he wasn't up to the job. His fellow boxers came out and buried him online. Shakur Stevenson, Jamel Herring, Errol Spence, and a few more. They buried him with tweets. But I think they're defending Wilder. That's their boy. That's why they're coming out like that. And he had a lot to say about Wilder. But one thing Chris didn't do, what Wilder did a whole lot of, he hasn't made no excuses. And Shakur said that, yeah, I'll leave him alone. He ain't made no excuses. Yeah, he didn't make no excuses, at least. He has to go back to the drawing board, reevaluate things, and just take them blue dyes and green dyes and the multicolour swatch shop thing out of his hair, and he'll be okay. The sisters, they can pull that off, but nah, come on, dudes. That was a heavyweight masterclass yesterday. Not for the whole 10. You know, Martin took his foot off the gas, and we thought they were going to do a little robbery and parley. In fact, I'm being a bit harsh. I'm saying he took his foot off the gas. JD, one of my subs, he said that Martin had slow feet. It's not so much he took his feet off the gas or he had slow feet. Tony was moving excessively because he didn't want to get hit by no big bombs. He didn't want to get lit up by them combinations. Jabs, body shots, rights to the head. The way he came from both channels, doubling up them hooks to the body, I haven't seen many heavyweights do that. The current heavyweights, haven't seen it. And YOKA didn't have an answer to it. And this is the first guy YOKA has fought, maybe in his life, that was bigger than him. Because they had Martin billed as 6'3". And I said, Martin ain't no 6'3". And when they were standing together at the weigh-in, you could see they were both the same height. But Martin was a lot bigger. Martin weighed in 270. 275 actually. 34 pounds heavier than Tony YOKA. And it's not just the size. When you're fighting someone who's 275 and well coordinated, and you've never faced this in your career, must be a shock to the system. Now, I'm going to fess up. I didn't like Martin's weight. From the last time I saw him in Saudi Arabia, he was over 280. So I was picking YOKA, his amateur pedigree, Olympic gold medalist, and his conditioning. I was banking on this, his speed, to get him through. But people have heard me talk up Martin BAKOLE, and I've always said Martin has skills. He surprised YOKA, Virgil Hunter, and a lot of you with his skills. There's no doubt about that. Underestimated Martin's skills. Martin weighed around 285 for his last fight in Saudi, and I was worried about the weight, and this is why I picked YOKA. I thought YOKA would be too quick, but his foot speed and his hand speed never played a factor. Never played a factor. YOKA was floored in the first round, a combination that culminated with a right hook. Had him down and hurt, first time in his career. And in the fifth, he didn't seem to get hit with anything. And it looked like his body language was quitting on him. Did he hurt his ankle or something? He went down without a punch being thrown, and it was counted by the referee. I don't know if he was correct to do that. Online, a lot of people were calling for Virgil Hunter's head. As soon as a fighter takes a defeat, they're looking at the coach. You know, it was Eddie Reynoso the other week. Now it's Virgil. The other week it was Ben Davison. Now apparently Virgil told YOKA to keep his head, insisting that his foe was slowing down. And then we had all the Monday morning quarterbacks online saying, oh, you see, that was bad advice. How was it bad advice? He came in at 270. I don't know if he was gassing or if he was trying to lure, because he did try to lure YOKA into these right hands, but Tony was too quick for that to ever happen. Martin was better when he was pressing the attack, coming forward behind that thumping jab. That's where he was effective. Now, he did take his foot off the gas. I don't know if he was gassing or not. So Virgil had a point. Whether he was tired or not, he did slow up. But YOKA couldn't do anything. When he needed a knockout, he was running around the ring like he had banked rounds early. A very rowdy Paris crowd were chanting YOKA, but they couldn't lift him. They couldn't lift him. Martin's jab busted up his nose. Well, not much really to say on it. You know what I mean? It was a great performance by Martin BAKOLE. Great performance. YOKA's team in France were overlooking BAKOLE. They were scheduling fights against Ajit Caballero, I believe, for the European title. All up in smoke. I'm assuming Martin BAKOLE is now a British citizen. Why wasn't he eligible to fight for the European title in YOKA's place? The 94-94 scorecard, well, what do you expect? It was in Paris. The judge should be investigated. That's all I can say. Bam Rodriguez. You could argue he scored 2 upsets. He came in at short notice early in the year against Carlos CUADRAS and then turned over RUNGVUSAI for the WBC flyweight title. He ended the year and struggled a little with Israel Gonzalez, but a great year. You could argue 2 upsets, but the RUNGVUSAI stoppage really stood out, didn't it? BLAIR, the FLAIR COBBS came out hard in the media, chastising Errol Spence and his reluctance to take on Terence Crawford. A couple days later, he went in the ring and got slapped around a little by Alexis Rocha and was stopped in the 9th, Floyd in the 8th, and was just taking a beating, really. He did come back to defeat Maurice Hooker, which redeemed him a little. Rocha had 2 more fights and he won, but they both went the distance, and the momentum went a little cold for him after the Blair victory, but he's got 2023 to come back and he has a winning momentum, which is more important than anything. I'll tell you what, man. Lubin was decimated in 1 round in 2017 by Jermell Charlo, and he was on a comeback of sorts going into 2022, put together a little unbeaten run. Then he ran into the string bean 6'5" light middleweight Sebastian Fundura. It was a great fight. Lubin went down from an uppercut in round 2. Fundura went down in round 7. The fight was in the balance, but they had to pull Erickson out at the end of round 9. They showed the 2 contrasting photos of him before and after, and he took a beating. That's why there was a little suspicion whether Fundura had something in his gloves, but you know them PBC fanatics. When a fighter takes a beating, then it's got to be a glove gate. That was an upset as far as I was concerned. The 18-0, 9 knockouts, 1 draw, unbeaten Montana Love, fighting in his hometown of Cleveland, took on the 15-2 Steve Spark from Australia. Montana was disqualified in the 6th round for throwing Sparks over the top rope, not before being floored by Sparks in round 2 and being manhandled for periods of the bout. It was a close fight, but an upset nonetheless. Montana wants a rematch. If Eddie can pull that off for him, that would be a good thing. But yo, maybe Steve Spark might want the rematch in Australia. Fancy going down under, Montana? Lots of fighters have went down under and haven't found it an easy commute and an easy place to get a W. Ask Manny. I don't think Montana deliberately threw him over the top rope, but it was an excessively rough infringement. As the lady commentating said, unnecessary roughness. I think she took that from Gridiron. And he deserved to get thrown out. I know that wasn't popular amongst maybe some of his fans and others, but this is boxing. It's not wrestling. I threw BIVOL and CANELO in there. Some people were saying not an upset at all, and I know where they're coming from. I know a lot of people who pick BIVOL. I'm not sure if it's an upset either, but it is for the most part. I thought it was a little closer than what people said. Not saying that CANELO was ever winning the fight, but it was a little closer than the whitewash people pronounced it as. And BIVOL established himself this year with that win, and then the Zurdo Ramirez win. Great year for BIVOL. Possibly fighter of the year. Do you consider it an upset? Should it be on the list? Let me know. BIVOL against CANELO. I thought he could have been more aggressive. I thought he could have been more aggressive against Ramirez as well, because there's an extra gear there he has that he's not showing us. And for anyone downplaying the Gilberto Ramirez win, we're talking about a man who was 44-0 going into the fight, who probably rehydrated to cruiserweight on fight night. It was an excellent win. All right, we'll do this one in real time, just because I want to watch it again and it's not very long. Lucas Browne lands a massive overhand right, which lands near the back of the head, but it was thrown from mid-range to close range, not right up close, and it caught him round the back of the head. And when they got up close, he did land, I guess, what was a rabbit punch, and my guy's senses went all about the place. The third knockdown punch landed round the back of the head, but once again, it wasn't when they were tangled up and he was just rabbit punching away, and Junior Farr had a disaster. Just couldn't get his legs under him after the first one. They protested, Team Farr, but didn't get anywhere with that. I don't think no one had Farr down as one of the hotter prospects in the game after losing to Joseph Parker, but at this stage of his career, he was supposed to get past Lucas Browne, who'd been getting knocked out by rugby players, and them shots around the back of the head done enormous damage. First round knockout, Lucas Browne over Junior Farr. Staying with the Australian action, I didn't score it, this one. I thought it was a little closer, as Maris Breidis lost his IBF World Cruiserweight title to Jai OPETAIA. Jai had his jaw broken, I believe, in 2 places. And it was a fight of 2 halves. BREIDIS showed a lot of toughness. BREIDIS finished very strong. It was an excellent fight. OPETAIA showed a lot of potential, no doubt about that. Tall, fast hands. Looks good in there. Once again, some will say not an upset. I believe this is an upset. I believe it was an upset. BREIDIS, arguably the best cruiserweight. I'd say he was ahead of BAKOLE. Yeah, I'd say. OPETAIA had never fought at this level before. It was an upset. As far as I was concerned, it was an upset. Closer than what a lot of people are saying, but not a robbery. Could have actually been in controversial decisions. As far as I'm concerned, a lot of people won't agree with that. But I'll put it here as an upset. Okay, the criteria here is not world title fights. This is about prospects who seem to have hit a bit of a wall this year. Edgar BERLANGA, he's been hitting a wall for a little while actually. Didn't look that great to me against Steve Rolls. Was getting pieced up way too much against Angulo. Scorecards weren't right, too wide. A frustrated Angulo tried to bite Angulo. And after a lot of hype, after a lot of early round knockouts, he needs to make a lot of improvements for 2023. I'll tell you what, Jordan Thompson in the 10th went through a rocky patch against Dukar, his toughest opponent to date from the Czech Republic. He got floored in the 10th, Jordan. But to me, he actually handled it a lot better than what people are saying, the crisis, because Jordan has had everything his own way. He's been banging people out in 1 round, 2 rounds, 1 round, 2 rounds. This is the furthest he's went by far. And the fact that he had enough awareness of mind to take a longer count rather than get up at 2 or 3. He had his wits about him still, but he's got a lot to work on, a whole lot to work on. He knows that. But he got the W. He survived. In his own words, he said the last 30 seconds were humbling. But overall, he's happy. In boxing, you can't afford to switch off. He knows he's got a lot of work to do. Yeah, it was a shock to see him on the canvas, but, you know, it's a boxing fight. It's a boxing ring. Shit happens. How do you assess Jordan Thompson's prospects now after seeing the Dukar fight? Are there flaws that he can iron out, or do you see a disaster waiting to happen? Let me know in the comment section. Troy Williamson, can he come back after a horrible performance against Josh Kelly? You know, Josh himself not pretty to watch, but pretty much forgettable British title fight. I thought Troy was going to win that, but he did look extremely limited, it has to be said. Where does he go from here? Where does Josh Kelly go from here? Can he get back on the world stage? Do you believe the David Afanasian fight was just a blip? Let me know. Canada, Montreal, where Arslanbek Makhmudov took on Carlos Takam. Even if the knockdowns weren't scored, they were going to give this fight to Makhmudov. Obviously, Takam had the quicker hands. He was rolling a lot of Makhmudov's right hands because Makhmudov just doesn't have the coordination to shorten his punches. Now, he's a scary looking fella, and if he catches anybody full-blooded, yeah, of course there's going to be issues. Of course it is, but will he be able to do that is the question. Is he carrying too much weight? 260. Like, what was Carlos Takam doing at 260? But look, he needs to be getting down to 250, Arslanbek, if he's going to be serious about challenging at top level, because he's just too crude. There's no coordination. When he tries to throw a combination, he smothers his work. The right hand is probably as powerful as any right hand in the weight class. I'm not going to lie, it is really powerful. But it's also a liability, the way he throws it too. Like, you can see him getting countered by the top guys, the 6'5", 6'6" guys who are quick, good reflexes. And then he's going to have to show us he's got the chin too. Takam is not a good gauge, though, to guess how Makhmudov does against the top 5 and top 10. Takam is quicker than all of them guys. Takam is one of the quickest guys in the weight class, even carrying 260. He has extremely fast hands. He has great center of gravity, and he's strong as a bull. So Takam catches most guys he fights with regularity. So there was no reason to believe that Makhmudov would be any different. He caught AJ, Takam. He caught Joyce. He gave Joseph Parker as much issues as he gave this guy here. Only Parker didn't have the power to steal the couple of knockdowns. So it would be interesting to see Makhmudov challenging for eliminators and other top 10 guys. And I think they have to go with it now. He's 33. There's no point holding him back. I don't see he's going to learn that much. They have to get his weight down a little, you know. He carries his hands way too low as well. Way too low, you know. And Takam made him pay for it, but he's not a knockout puncher. But yo, it's quite entertaining. Doesn't have to improve. He just needs to give us good fights, really, isn't it? John Ryder's aggression was rewarded unjustifiably, in my opinion. I thought Danny Jacobs outboxed the man from Islington, London, over 12 rounds at the Alexander Palace. 2 scores of 115, 113 went in favour of John Ryder. Another score of 115-13 to Jacobs, who took the defeat extraordinarily well, shook Ryder's hand, took it in stride. It was controversial, but this can happen. Home cooking. The American fighter didn't get the break in this one. Ryder, however, didn't waste the victory. He went on to become the WBO interim title, stopping the undefeated Scottish contender Zach Parker. Michael Hunter, Martin BAKOLE, Luis Ortiz, Joseph Parker. I believe Charles Martin all avoided the IBF eliminator with Filip HRGOVIC. Now, it made HRGOVIC a boogeyman in other people's eyes. I would theorize it wasn't so much fear of HRGOVIC. The fight just wasn't paying that much. There may be some cases where his boogeyman status maybe scared them out of taking the fight. I'm not going to write that off. It took the 39-year-old ZHANG from China to take up the slack. And although losing a unanimous decision, he came out of the fight with a whole load of respect, credibility. After watching him struggle with Jerry Forrest, he came back knowing there weren't too many opportunities out there, him being 39. Did I forget to say Tony Yoka avoided the eliminator as well? Andy Ruiz, Murat Gassiev. A lot of people avoided that fight. Zhang scored a knockdown, which I don't believe was scored, first round. Uncharacteristically, HRGOVIC fought large periods of the fight on the back foot, adopting a safety-first approach. And he got out there with the W, but not many were impressed. Some people believing it could have went the other way. Gary Russell, in his mid-30s, it looked like the inactivity and age, the injuries caught up to him a little. He injured his left shoulder during the bout, but he boxed relatively well against MAGSAYO, who upset Russell and took his title, his WBC featherweight title. MAGSAYO looked limited and he lost in his first defense against Vargas. He was the bigger man, he was the more aggressive, threw the harder punches. Gary, from that southpaw stance, was the more skilled boxer, and that showed. And in all truth, the best case I can make for Russell defending the belt was it was a draw. But when it's that close, you can't really shout the place down because it just wasn't decisive. Just wasn't decisive. Even though MAGSAYO hasn't got the belt, maybe Russell should try and avenge the loss. How did you score it? Josh Taylor found himself cut above the left eye, a couple of cuts, floored, outboxed for long periods of the fight by the southpaw, the unfancy southpaw, Jack Catterall. Controversial decision, it made a lot of waves, even becoming somewhat of a topic in Parliament. There will be a rematch early this year in Scotland. Josh Taylor had a crash landing back down to earth after the lofty heights he scaled, becoming the undisputed champion at 140. He believes it was an off night. Some will tell you that he's dead at the weight. Catterall, he'll tell you that he was robbed. I will tell you it was a close fight, but if I was going to swing it anyway, it would be to Catterall. Looking forward to the rematch. Maybe there should be a rubber match between PULEV and Chisora. 2 split decisions, 1 apiece, and Derek got through on scores of 116, 114, 116, 112, and Marcus McDonald scored it to PULEV, 116, 112. PULEV, he was cut around both eyes. 2 aging heavyweights put on a spirited battle. I believe Chisora win was a fair result, but it wasn't by much. PULEV hasn't been seen in a ring since. Del Boy went on to get stopped as Tyson Fury made
a voluntary defense of his WBC heavyweight title. Dillian Whyte needed a late rally to see off the challenge of Jermaine Franklin. It was a majority decision win for Dillian. Many people thought the American won it. I'm theorizing perhaps that he exceeded their expectations, and they're perhaps giving him credit for that they may not have gave him if it was seen as a more even fight going into the fight. Franklin not a concussive hitter, and that may have cost him. Dillian seemed to be, I don't know if the way to describe it is caught between styles. He just parted ways with Xavier Miller, and he was coming off a disappointing performance in his first title shot against Tyson Fury. And this was his first fight with Buddy McGirt, who said he didn't study Jermaine Franklin, and he said he's never watched Dillian fight for that matter either, which was a strange admission. Whatever they practiced and whatever the game plan was, Franklin was in the fight until the later rounds where Dillian landed the heavier shots that Franklin visibly felt. I thought Dillian was, worth the win, but it was a controversial one, depending on what angle you're coming from, who you're supporting and how you see it. Now, hands up, I only watched the highlight footage of Samuel Carmona, another upcoming Spanish fighter, very good feet, hand speed, good boxer. He challenged Julio Cesar Martinez for the WBC World Flyweight title and lost a majority decision, which many people thought he won. If you saw the whole fight, tell me how you scored it. Martinez, to me, was loading up too much and was getting picked off by jabs as Cardona pot-shotted and landed combinations as well. I'd have to see the whole fight. The DAZN commentary team pointed out a stat that Martinez landed 25 to the body and Carmona only 3, and that was after 5 or 4 rounds. So perhaps the body work went unnoticed by many, saying that Carmona should have won. How did you see it? T.O. didn't seem to know how to cut off the exit points, just like Mikey Garcia didn't. Sandor favours the movement to his right. Often his escape or exit points are moving out to his right when you try to pin him on the ropes. After 6 rounds, according to the ESPN commentary team, Lopez landed 6 jabs after 6 rounds, an appallingly low number. There were 2 knockdowns in my opinion. One was registered by the referee in a second, and there was one that was considered a slip. And I thought they were both legit knockdowns that should have been scored to Sandor Martin. They were both in the same position in the ring, virtually the same check hook from the right hand, which T.O. just walked into. I believe that was in the 7th. I might have got that wrong, but I believe it was the 7th round that was. Sandor went through the majority of the fight with what looked like a broken nose, through what looked like them clashing heads. His corner managed to control the bleeding, but he soldiered on. He's a tough man. Sandor surprised a lot of people with his ability, which I told everybody not to sleep on the alleged Euro bum, this week's Euro bum. Don't sleep on Sandor. I mean, I could scream robbery, but when the CompuBox stats tell you that neither man landed more than 4 punches than the other in any round, according to CompuBox, this was a close fight. Sandor is not promoted by Top Rank. ESPN don't have a vested interest in Sandor, and the fight went to T.O. as it normally does, although I didn't score, but it looked like Sandor edged it. Gallo used his feet better than he did in the last fight, especially in the earlier phase of the fight. The problem Roman has, and it showed up in this fight, it was very close. Roman is not one-dimensional. He showed that against Martinez. Not one-dimensional. But when it comes to Gallo, he can only really do one thing, and that's come forward. Whereas Gallo can fight in the pocket and at range. I had the feeling that Estrada could have made this one easier because Gonzalez looked flat. They were talking about overtraining, but he seemed like he wanted to knock Gonzalez out. I think if he had just controlled it with the jab more, but that's not their style. Both of them like putting on a show for the crowd. Wasn't much in it on the final punch stat report. Estrada landed 17 more according to that. Roman rallied late on. I didn't score it, but perhaps the right man won. Yo, no disrespect to anyone who follows the channel, but if you want to see styling, as you were talking about on Friday on Channel 5, go watch one Estrada in the last round. And watch how he styled. Although it was a very tight round against an elite fighter. You want to see styling? One showed his ass, bruh. Some serious boxing, bruh. Serious boxing and slugging. Wow.
Coming out with a shout in this original styling.
Josh Warrington was punching Lopez in his pelvic bone, or his arse nearly, it looked like. Headbutts. I'm not too harsh on forearm tactics because I see it as an extension of your glove. It's illegal, but cool. The headbutts though, no. Too much headbutts and too much billy goat tactics. If he wasn't trying to put his head in Lopez's face, he was charging his head into his chest. And I believe he was hurt with a body shot midway through. And he told his dad he was hurt to the body. So maybe that impeded his performance. But he was fighting dirty before that. While Lopez, unorthodox, dips really low, brings up the left hook, the uppercut. He's a very good body puncher though. That's underrated. Very good body puncher. And he's a very good jabber. His legs, he uses them very effectively. And when he was going backwards, counter-punching Warrington, it was a joy to watch that boxing performance. It really was. Josh caught him with some shots, he did. But this guy was piecing up Warrington with combinations. I picked Warrington to win, and I got it wrong. Even after the final bell, I thought they were going to give it to Warrington. No, I think Warrington was stunned. The Leeds crowd was stunned that they would give a verdict to the outsider. At times, Warrington seemed to run out of ideas and then body shots were getting to him and he was on the retreat, getting walked down. When Lopez was on the retreat, he was countering. It's a big difference. I can see the argument for rewarding Warrington's aggression. I can see that, but I thought the right man won. Lopez, that underrated jab, his combinations, busted Warrington's nose early. In the second round, there was a head clash or a deliberate butt by Warrington and Lopez was cut on his left eye. Just like Mauricio Lara was cut around the eye with Warrington when they had their rematch. Is it a bit of a coincidence these butts just keep popping up and cutting Warrington's opponents? I think not. Lopez, though, was not just going to take the rough stuff and lie down. He kept smiling at Warrington and talking to him. Worked the body over very well. That can't be neglected. It was a majority decision. It would be a major setback for Warrington, Eddie Hearn, DAZN and Matchroom, but somebody has to lose. Carl Froch, he seemed a little outraged that Warrington lost. But he must have been scoring all the headbutts as scoring punches.
That's it. That's fine, folks.